Welcome to Southern Soul Chats, where this season we will be diving into the stories of individuals who have navigated the deeper waters of faith. I'm your host, Dr. Miranda Ferguson, and together we'll explore the journeys of people who've taken that courageous step forward in their faith. Get ready to be inspired as we uncover the incredible stories of unwavering belief and the remarkable impact it's had. If you're excited to join us on this faith-filled exploration, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Let's step forward. Hey y'all, I'm so glad that you are back with us for another week of Southern Soul Chats. Now let me give you a heads up. This is a part 2 of Breaking Strongholds. We had part one last week. So before you get into this, we don't want you to have any spoilers that you don't want to go back. So maybe take a second and jump back to last week. Of course, you're welcome to stay for this week. I don't want to run you away. But for those of you who are coming back to hear it, if you remember, we are with Adrienne and Colin Dyer. And we last week we made it through Adrienne's story. We didn't finish her story out, but we made it through her story with some body image struggles, what turned into be an anorexia eating disorder. And we talked through what that looked like in their relationship and how they walked through that. And this week we're putting Colin in the hot chair because as Adrienne is still moving through that, Colin has some things that are sprouting up in his life. And so we're going to pick up there today. So again, we want you to go back and hear the beginning of the story. If you're new to this week and you didn't hear it, please go back and check it out. But for the rest of you, we're gonna put all these pieces together and give you a story. So, hey, Colin and Adrienne, thank you again for doing a round 2. So I really appreciate it. You know, sometimes that happens, guys. Sometimes we get into stories and we just need more. We need more time. And so I'm excited for them to hear the rest of your story, especially Colin's portion, because it's very powerful and it really shows God's sense of humor, I think.
Yeah.
And what God's capable of using and how he uses things when we don't know what the plan looks like, but he does. Mm-hmm. And so I'm super excited to do that. So we're going to pick up where we left off, which was you guys were engaged. You're still struggling. You still have things, but now you're about to get married. And we'll start there with that had to trigger to and walking through it, and then you get married. So you get married, and what happens?
Let's see. So definitely still struggling with body image issues, but it's definitely one of those things where it's not as bad as it was. I'm not as miserable. The Holy Spirit is working in me to catch those thoughts, when I'm struggling with it, but I definitely wanted to look perfect for our wedding day. So I was making sure I didn't eat a ton or whatever, but all good things. So we get married. It was awesome. Best day ever. And we start doing life together. I'm still very much controlling everything that I'm eating and not allowing certain foods in my diet that are in my mind, fatty foods or weight gain or just yummy, but no nutritional value. Everything I put in my body had to have nutritional value. And so we were living with his parents initially because neither of us had a job when we got married, which was not part of the plan, but it's not how that worked out. So we were living with
There's a theme there.
Yeah. So we were living with his family at the time, and I was definitely I was very much volunteering to cook as many meals as possible so I could make them as healthy as possible. Not sure what his parents thought about that as far as this is not the usual thing that we eat. But anyway, so slowly growing from that, we ended up getting jobs in Cincinnati. So we ended up moving into my parents' house for a year while we saved for a home. Still eating more healthy, still dealing with occasional body image issues and still wanting to control things and not, I gained weight back. So I was healthy, but not I was still definitely thin,
Right.
It was just definitely one of those things where it's Adrienne, you could eat more, or you could have a bowl of ice cream. It's not going to kill you, but it's no, I don't, it's not healthy, blah, blah, blah. So I went from not wanting to gain weight to my excuse being it wasn't healthy. If it's not going to be nutritional for my body, I'm not putting it in my body,
Right.
And I would, judge those who did type of thing. So it was definitely a holier than thou, like I'm making better choices for myself, you know.
You're just putting in a new file to make it
literally.
okay.
literally. So, but it was still like I was aware of that. I was held accountable by family and friends and stuff like that. So I definitely I had that, and it was helpful. While we were living with my family though, and we did finally get jobs and living with my family and working. And I definitely had a moment of like, it was like a couple of weeks where I was definitely like suddenly getting really fixated on again, really struggling. I got really quiet. I looked in the mirror and burst into tears at like the way that like I thought my legs looked that day or something like that. And so Colin actually like we went on this super, super long walk back to our old middle school because my parents lived right next to our high school, and then down the road was our middle school. So we walked back there and there were these swing sets, and I was sitting on the swings and I was just crying. I was being honest like with where I was at. Like I'm struggling with all these thoughts again. Like this sucks. I'm relapsing. Like what the heck, you know? And I was like, God, do you love me? Like I was just struggling, and Colin was standing there and he was just really quiet. And then I think I was swinging on the swing and you were just sitting there listening to me, and he like stopped, prayed for me and gave me this hug. And it kind of felt like at the time, like I was like, Lord, do you love me? Do you care about me? Like, do you care that I'm struggling with this still? Like, why am I still struggling with this? And it was almost like I felt the Lord like hugging me through Colin. Like it was like, yes, I love you. And that's why I've given you like this family and this support system. And like, that's why this, you know, it's almost like the struggle in and of itself. Like I'm allowing you to experience the struggle so that you continue to choose me, because you know that choosing this is miserable. So like, I'm allowing you to continue to choose me, and I'm graciously giving you Colin and your family and everyone around you that will allow you to struggle, but we'll still hold you accountable. We'll still pull you out of it. We'll still love you regardless of the struggle. So anyway, that was
and God wants to be number one, right?
Yes.
So if you think about in terms of like the Bible, that disorder is like an idol.
Oh, 100%.
And so he's not going to let that idol be more than he is.
Right. He will allow it to make you miserable.
Yeah,
so
he will allow you to have to sit in that and the consequences of, let's just say that's sin, if it's a sin, or the consequences of our actions, whatever. But he's going to let you sit in it. But he's going to remind you through moments like that you might be having to sit in this, but I'm still faithful and I'm still here.
Yes. And that's kind of what that hug felt like.
And I want you to choose me.
Yeah.
So if you got to be miserable to choose me,
I will let it.
I will let you be miserable.
Exactly.
But while that moment's sweet and warm and fuzzy, Colin though is struggling. And so if you heard the first episode, he mentioned some of those. But in case people decided to be rebels and not go back and listen to the last episode, explain to them where you were in your struggles at this moment.
So at that moment, we were married and I had always grown up as sort of the chubby fat kid. So I was that growing up, and off and on I would struggle with that. And by this time I just happened to be really struggling with it. And part of it was like the community that we were in, as far as like we were working at an animation studio and we were working with other artists, and you know, height of the hipster craze and everything. And I was just like I was tired of being like the fat guy, because I always liked fashion growing up. Like I like dressing myself. I like looking good. Always have. I'm a performer. I can be a ham like that. I'm the third child, so I can be a ham. But I was like, I can't like look cool, and I don't look good. So there was just that was brewing inside of me. And I remember having this conversation with Adrienne where I was just like, we were in the basement and we were like working out, and I just told her, I was like, I'm tired of being the fat guy. And she was like, well, then
I was like, I can help you with that, because I'm all about losing weight, you know?
Yeah.
Let me help you. I have a plan.
Of course, my help was little unhealthy help, but you know.
So that's when it, like, for me, then I started really fixating, because it was one of those things like living with her parents. We were newlyweds and we were learning how to cohabitate, but I was also in my in-laws' house.
Right. Ideal for after your honeymoon.
But also like having our first jobs downtown, and I'm working in this, you know, in an art field, but not my specialty. So I'm struggling to fit in with this artistic style. things like that. So I'm kind of like, I'm very much like bucking the responsibilities of what I'm supposed to do to fit in there. Cause I'm very much like, I'm different. I'm better than this art form because XYZ reasons in my own head, thinking I'm better than I am. So the only thing at that point in time I can like control is, oh, well, I can work out and look good because I'm not cooking dinner. Cause you know, like we might
Typically
help
my mom
yeah,
or me.
we
Yeah.
might help make dinner, but I don't have any other responsibility except for go to work and then that's it. So I'm like, oh, well, then I can work out and I can look good. And so that became like my fixation was what it became like mirrored a lot of like what
Yeah.
Adrienne was doing, but I was doing it under, you know, same excuse, the guise of being healthy. But the difference was that like I had weight to lose.
Right.
Like, so for me, it was an easy be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Cause like you're a bigger dude. So that makes sense that you want to get more healthy and, you
And
know,
of course
look the
I
better.
encouraged it, you know, like I
Right.
was like,
Well, now you got a little partner in crime.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I was like, we can be super healthy together. We're like this healthy, skinny couple. Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
And you won't be upset when I want to eat rabbit food my
Right,
whole life.
exactly,
Because you eat rabbit
exactly.
food too.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I draw the line at kale.
That's funny.
But
I draw the line
yeah.
at green.
So it just became that kind of it was just this nasty beast that we were both kind of feeding into, which really, it's funny because like looking back, like you can see how it was bleeding into our work ethic when we were at work. We were just miserable. Like because we had to drive downtown. So it was a good
45
minutes to get from where we were in the suburbs to downtown. And from the minute we got in the car to the minute we got there, we were griping and complaining and angry about having to go. And then we'd do our
Or
day.
about work, and, you know, coworkers or, you know, a particular project that was really irritating or what there wasn't a lot of happy conversations.
Right.
Looking back
Yeah.
at it, we just had plenty of things to complain about.
Yep. And so then that would be the same for the return trip back home. But then, you know, that hour that we had to work out before dinner was like the only like time of happiness. Be like, fine, I can just work out then.
Yeah.
And we'd go on walks at lunch at work. I mean, it was nice that we worked together, but we'd go on long walks to be, you know, like, oh, it's extra cardio that we can get in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In the guise of like, oh, we're spending time together. You're such a cute little couple.
I'm gonna tell you, you two had figured out how to make it
Oh
all
my gosh,
fit
we-
into exactly what it needed to look like.
We were good at putting on a face. You
But
know?
isn't it good? I mean, isn't it crazy though? Like I say, you guys, but really, isn't it crazy how the devil can really help you
Oh,
to
yes.
justify
Oh, yeah.
every
Everything.
single thing, even to the point of saying like healthy, godly, and make you believe it and twist it in such a way that it's still damaging you so badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a mastermind.
Oh yeah.
To just give you just enough nudge, just enough. Well, but this,
But it's
but that. There's nothing wrong with that.
it's actually a healthy choice to spend
Yeah.
time together, work out together, eat well. You know, like how could that possibly be bad? Where
Yeah.
could you go wrong with that?
Yeah. I mean, he's just a master manipulator.
Absolutely.
Master manipulator. So this goes on for a couple of years that you guys are living and working, but then you move, right?
Yeah, we were with my parents for about
A little over a year.
a little over a year, a year-ish. We found a home, bought it. Still, you know, like we ended up getting different jobs at this point, all this kind of stuff. Still, you know, like we weren't working out quite as hard. I
Yeah.
think we were slowly starting to pull back from the crazy a little bit, like because life is getting a little bit busier.
Yeah.
So like
You're
we have less
adulting
time.
now.
Right? Exactly. We
Welcome
have the
to adulting.
Yep.
have the responsibility of a home, and things break, and you got to take care of them, and like that kind of stuff. So like we were still, working out and stuff like that, but it wasn't as much of a fixation as so that in and of itself helps you heal a little bit from things, because maybe you can't eat super healthy one day and you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, well, that didn't actually change my body overnight.
Right.
Like in my mind it would have. But yeah, so like we did slowly start to let
That's
that
like chill out. Like,
chill a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was like getting maybe becoming a little more comfortable and being married. I mean, like you said, when you get married, all of a sudden everything changes because Nell's ones too. You're not in the parents' house, so you, like you said, you have to clean your own dishes and clean your own house, and now you got to go grocery shopping, and so it doesn't leave a lot of time to be able to spend 3-4 hours
Right. Working out.
working out. Yeah.
You have other responsibilities.
Right.
So that's also, it was a helpful part of that process. And then we ended up moving to Las Vegas because I thought I had a job opportunity out there, and we felt that like a lot of doors were closing in Cincinnati, which was a hard decision because we still love Cincinnati and we had an incredible church. Like my family's church is what we were going to. We had a great group of friends, and it's family. Like both of us grew up there, like we're comfortable there. But I thought I had a job opportunity in Las Vegas. So we were like, okay, Lord, like maybe this is where you want us to go next. But like it was more so because I wanted the potential success and fame and fortune that like this job opportunity was presenting. And so like that's what we were starting to care about more, was this idea of like financial success. And that's where the next the next fixation started happening.
4 years into Vegas, you're there into 4 years. It's not looking like that.
No, it's like literally, it's like the Lord, like as soon as we got there, started taking it away, and we just were forcing it for 4 years. But there were plenty of other lessons learned in Las Vegas. It wasn't like total waste of time. Colin started struggling with other stuff, all that kind of stuff. We did have an awesome church out there. We didn't get as connected in Vegas because we were both pulling away. He was starting to really struggle with his things, but there wasn't we found an amazing church, have some lifelong friends from Vegas there too, but we were pursuing things other than the Lord.
Yeah.
We were
So
pursuing
we've
success.
we've circled back around till we drew nearer to the Lord, which led to us being married. But now we're married, and we realize that things cost money, and that it feels good to be successful and to be wanted. And so now it's fueling another side of you, but yet you're still a little empty.
Yep.
So we're gonna let Colin.
Yep.
We're gonna let Colin pick it up. So Colin, what started happening in Vegas? You're in Vegas. You're there for a couple of years. What started transpiring with you?
So Vegas it felt like very much like this. It was like this big landscape, this new beginning for us. Because I mean, it definitely fed into this ego that we had started to build for ourselves, which that ego had,
Which was based on nothing.
right. It was what is ego ever based on, really?
Right.
And it had started even in Cincinnati. We were early adopters to a live stream video app called Periscope, and it was one of the first ones that was coming out. And so we adopted onto it early, and Adrienne was doing fashion streams, I was doing art streams, and we were getting really popular. We went to New York for a summit, with all the influencers,
and then
so
the app ends up dying out.
Yep.
But we were feeling pretty good about ourselves, for a solid 6 months.
So we built this fake identity of man, we are really popular and really cool.
Which
and
we weren't
no.
really, but we were just
but in that
it
moment,
goes to your head.
in that moment, it feels like that.
And at least we had come to a point where we're okay, this feels really toxic. We have to stop doing it because my day
and the
is
app
ruined.
itself died.
Yeah, it's true.
Which
was great.
Other live streaming took off, obviously.
Yeah,
It helped to die that part out.
that's true. That's true. But then the idea of going to Vegas felt okay, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do it on our own. It's going to be you and me, babe. We're going, manifest destiny.
We're gonna rule
west.
Vegas.
Yeah. And
Fame and fortune. Let's
again,
get it.
it's grass is always greener.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'm an artist. That's great. I'm going to be much closer to LA, and, there's going to be art scenes. There's going to be more opportunities, especially for my skill set with sequential art, for storyboarding and all that stuff. I'm in my eyes, I have blinders that here's our success. And that's what we're pursuing, is this success. However, we never defined what is success.
We just thought, enough money to buy anything we wanted, or which, most people would define success, right?
And knowing who you are, people knowing who, you say, oh,
yes, name.
That's
Colin Dyer. Oh, Colin Dyer.
Yeah,
Right.
Adrienne
exactly.
Dyer. Oh, yeah, Adrienne Dyer.
Yeah.
That is a huge thing for people to just be known.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, especially in his industry, because his name gets him jobs, right? As an artist, comic book artist, that kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And so that's the area that's what my sight, like that's what I'm looking at, and that's the only thing I'm looking at is like that's what Vegas has to offer. So let's do it.
Yeah.
And let's make everything happen to make that happen.
Yeah.
And the crazy part was like getting to Vegas was smooth. Like it was very like our
So we
house
felt
sold.
like God was blessing,
Yeah.
you know, we're
Right.
like, oh, like we definitely
must
had,
be.
exactly.
Yeah.
We had our plans. They were not God's plans. He used them regardless. But like, you know,
He still allowed you guys. He still allowed you guys to take that step there,
Right.
because he had some stuff for you to learn.
exactly.
So we are we get to Vegas, and the work that Adrienne is doing, it's not paying anything. So
No.
we're in this mindset of like, okay, well, you know, big time work ethic. We got to lay the groundwork. You know, it takes 5 years to be an overnight success. All of these, just like these platitudes, we're telling ourselves like, okay, you got to lay all the groundwork down first, so it's okay.
So
Like,
the money will start coming in at some point.
so like we're making all these excuses for delaying what is a very dumb situation, like a work situation.
Yeah.
I fortunately was able to get small contracts here and there that were enough to keep us afloat. And I mean, but those were projects that I worked on kicking and screaming. Like I
we
thought
were
they
not
were one
satisfied
thing.
with anything that came
Right.
our way because it wasn't good enough. It wasn't big enough. It wasn't whatever.
Yeah.
It felt less than what you were there for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or and it's so funny too, because like for me artistically, like I'm better than this. Like why do I have to like drop my page rate for you? I'm better than this, and all of these things. But you know, completely missing the point that I'm like having work to provide for
Right.
a family and
Bills.
Yeah.
Paying bills.
yeah.
Exactly.
And so
we were
it's just-
definitely not.
Somebody's gotta buy that
faithful. yeah. Yeah.
Nobody should be buying that kale. So anyway, that's kind of that started happening, and then I, you know, finished this just horrible project, and then I thought, you know, I had this big project come onto my plate, and it was with a great writer. She'd worked with Marvel and DC, and she was working on an image project. And
So we thought that would be the end to
right.
the industry.
And I thought, I was like, this is it. Not only that, but like her husband is like a big time guy in the comic book industry. Like he's a legacy. And not to mention, then like the project turned out to be a biblically based project. And I'm like,
You're like, surely.
exactly.
This is why you brought us
all
to
right,
Yeah.
God, like this is it. We
Exactly.
we figured it out.
I'm like, thank you, Lord. But then I'm also like, am I really saying thank you, Lord? Because
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, me.
yeah,
I'm so skilled.
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm good and I was the right person for your
Right.
for this project.
Well, it's easy to lose God in that, right?
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's easy to, even when God's really directing you somewhere, to kind of be like pilot, co-pilot moment.
Right.
Like, okay, thanks for getting me here, but I'm going to need you to sit over there because now I got it.
I got this.
Like
Yeah.
for sure.
That is probably my biggest downfall is God directing, or I'm thinking he's directing, and then me just wanting to pick it up and be like, cool, I'll catch you later.
Yep.
And that's usually when I've screwed something up or it didn't quite work out, and then I'm
Like,
circling back
oh.
around like, hey, you want to have your chair back?
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally.
Do you want to fly the plane again? Because I just crashed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember when I said I got this?
Yeah,
Yeah, I lied.
I didn't.
I did not.
But so it being like an art project, it was very much that. It was like, sweet. Thanks God, you got me here. I got it.
Yeah.
Like now it's time for me to go in technician mode and make this art. But then also being like, I'm gonna make this art, but I'm not making it because it is a story that I want to be told and because it's presenting, you know, it's presenting a gospel story. But it's because I'm like, I think that this is going to be my end in my industry.
Yeah. This is the moment I've been waiting for.
Right, exactly.
The payoff.
And so I'm working through that. And so we're getting closer to like 2019. I'm getting close to finishing it. And it's a Kickstarter, so it's not a guaranteed like publishing. And but we get it funded through Kickstarter. And I'm like, and this is what it is. So
I know. I was going to ask
Yeah.
you, like, can I? I'm going to brag on it in a minute, but you go ahead with your story.
So the ironic part, which it's the book of Ruth is what I illustrated, and what I think is really, this is where God's humor comes in, is it's a story about God's provision when it's so unlikely, and I missed it. Like it was right in front of me, and I'm illustrating it, and I'm diving into it, and I missed the entire point of the story of the Book of Ruth, because again, I'm just super selfish that this is going to be my end to my industry to get my name out there so I can be at the top level. Because in my mind, I'm like, I deserve to be at the top level.
And God's got you working on drawing the Book of Ruth in a comic form. And
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so funny how you can just be so, I was blinded by that ambition, the career ambition, like all of the things, just not accounting for anything else that the Lord had been doing up to that point. And,
but you did during this book, doing this book, does this, when you had your own secret going on, were you doing the book during that time, or did it happen after the book?
It was towards the very end of it. Because we had gotten the Kickstarter.
I was asking these questions too.
Yeah,
Once I found everything out, I was like, when did this start? I don't understand.
And that's the ironic part that happened during the working on the Book of Ruth, that I was, I had seen that the Kickstarter had launched and we had all of these things to fulfill, and but the comic industry was in a weird position, and nobody was sending me messages. I wasn't getting any contacts, nothing was happening. And so I'm finishing this book and I have no prospects, because sort of as the life of a freelancer is, it's while you're on a project, you're always looking for other work. And so a lot of times you try to stagger your work. So it's as I'm finishing this one, maybe
you're hoping for something to pick up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the ebb and flow that you like to work in, so that you're constantly
Working?
keeping a stream. Yeah. Keeping a stream of income.
Paying the bills?
Yeah. Shocking. It's weird how
It's crazy.
weird how it works.
They don't teach you that in high school.
Or college.
Amen to that.
So anyway, I didn't have anything. And so I, again, was so blinded by this that I was starting to feel very depressed, very frustrated. And I had really no outlet for it. I didn't have any, because it's such an isolating career path, working in comics or working on this pre-production side of sequential art, is that you're the only one who can do that part. So you're by yourself. You got, you're working long hours, late nights, and you don't talk to people and can't go anywhere. And so I started just getting into my own head about all of this. And it felt like as this was ending, it felt like no opportunities were coming. And that just started spiraling down more and more into a self-destructive mentally. And then that self-destruction started becoming more physical when I realized, hey, if I drink, I don't feel this. I don't have to feel that mental weight anymore. That disparity, that hopelessness. If I drink, I numb that, and everything's all good again, and I feel fine.
Dumb question. to say if I drink, I can numb this. That means there had to be somewhere, had you had moments before, when you were younger or out partying with your lacrosse, and not lacrosse, but when you were doing the frisbee stuff, were there moments where you had out being drunk and drinking, and you knew there was a forget? Because I'm thinking as a person who's never drank doesn't really understand what to forget everything.
Well, yeah, and here's the interesting part is I didn't drink till I was 21, and that was not a thing in my life, but I'm a big guy and I had a surprisingly high tolerance, and I always had, and so it took a lot for me to actually feel, start feeling the results. But when I knew that it's oh, well, if I get to this point, then I'm at this safe point where everything's good. I'm just happy. I feel good. I'm happy.
I'm not stressed, not worried.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The anxiety goes away and I'm just I'm very chilled. I'm okay, cool. I know if I can get to that point, I'll be good. Mm-hmm. And so it's the anxiety of this and sort of the disparity and the loneliness of it. I'm oh, well, if I get to that point, I'm not going to care. I don't care. And then I can coast, I can finish the book and I'll feel fine. I'll deal with it tomorrow. And that became sort of I'll deal with it tomorrow. And that was something that I did prior to the drinking. I didn't like hard, heavy mandates. I would get overwhelmed with stuff quickly. Deadlines, those things. I would just even emails. Emails would stress me out.
5,000 emails will stress anybody out.
Yeah.
But even just one email
one.
would stress him out. And I even never understood that. I'd be what? Just check your email. It's not a big deal. Like, what? Why are you freaking out about this? Like, even I never understood, but it was like you'd already convinced yourself too that you were like a failure and you couldn't do certain things.
Yeah.
But
So
isn't that
like,
crazy? Because like you looked in the mirror and thought you were 200 pounds,
right?
and he couldn't see it.
Right.
But he looks at the email and it feels like the world's caving in on you, and you
'Cause he
can't
was-
see it.
Right. Because he was constantly expecting bad news.
Yeah, because at that point, like really in my career and everything, all I had really like professionally was rejection.
Right.
And so
And failure.
and failure and
quote unquote failure.
right. It's like
Well, failure in your eyes.
Yeah. Well, in everything that happened in like career wise, whether it was like with a company or freelance, it always started out with such like I had such great expectations, and then it ended in just this like catastrophe fireball mess. And so it ended with such a like poor taste in my mouth. So everything like in my mind going into any project started this cycle of like it's going to be fun, but in the back of my mind it's like no it's not. It's going to be ruined by the end of it.
Just
So
waiting for the ball to drop.
yeah, so that you fast forward that and you put that forward with the book of Ruth, I'm getting towards the end of it. My brain is already going to like, this is not going to end well for you. And so then I'm now like, aha, I'm going to get ahead of you. I'm going to block that feeling.
And it actually ended fine. Like
And it
that was
ended
one of the
perfectly
projects
fine.
that actually ended okay.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's like the crazy part is like,
But because your head was already set that it wasn't, like it was too late, the damage was done.
Right.
right. The sabotage it already
instead of waiting
started.
it out and being, you were just like, nah,
Yeah.
block that.
yeah. And that's
Fix
when
that.
your drinking started for real. Right.
Like that's when it started getting bad.
So were you like at work and so you'd stop off and just drink there? Because I'm thinking we talked about this earlier, like where Adrienne was able to have excuses and hide the shoes on the other foot now. I mean, she's still struggling and having things go on, but hers is out there.
Yeah.
She's got accountability, but now you're the one keeping the secret. So what were you like? Clearly you're not doing it at home.
I
Not
was.
He was.
at home.
Yeah.
I was completely oblivious for 3 years. Totally oblivious. I saw different signs, but I never actually, and I think this is a God thing, I never actually saw him drinking. Like, and so, I don't want to jump way too ahead.
Yeah.
But like,
So okay, so that kind of
didn't see
answers the
it.
question. So it was right out in the open, but not really.
well,
Right.
he hit
right.
it.
Yeah.
You definitely hit it. I didn't even know you were buying alcohol. I knew we would have like a glass, like wine occasionally, or like we both like occasionally would have wine like maybe once a week, maybe. And half the time we wouldn't even finish a bottle; it would sit on the counter and go bad, and we'd toss it. Or like Angry Orchard or something like that.
yeah.
Like ciders. Never anything hard. Never. So like it would never occurred to me that it
So
could.
there was something more with him
that there
than
could
just
even
that.
ever be a problem because he hit it really well. He would go buy groceries. He'd volunteer to go get groceries. And that's when he would do it. And I didn't know.
Makes for a good grocery shopping trip. So so it's out there, but it's not out there. Like
Right.
she doesn't
Right.
have a clue, but
Right.
you're pulling
it's
it
still
off.
very much like close to my chest, hiding this.
Like he was gaining weight. I did notice that. I thought it was just because he was working on this project and he was stressed and he wasn't working out anymore. And so I tried to encourage him. Like I thought and I knew he was struggling like with some depression as far as how many projects had gone south or bad or whatever. So I knew those things. So, and I also knew he had celiac, and we thought that his stomach issues that he was starting to have were because like he would tell me, oh, I must have eaten something bad. I must have eaten gluten or something like that. And that's why my stomach is killing me today.
Hangover.
And I had no clue because I had never been around alcohol. Like
Yeah, you didn't know the signs.
I didn't. No, because like I never went to parties. I was too awkward and shy to go to parties in high school.
Yeah.
In college, I'd go home every weekend. I wouldn't go to parties on the weekend. I went to like maybe 2 because I felt bad. I was always telling my friends no, but because it was simply not an interest for me. I just didn't care. So I was not around it. I didn't know what it smelled like, which my mom's dad was an alcoholic. So she knew what it smelled like. So she caught a whiff of it. But I had no clue. I couldn't smell anything. I just noticed his behavior would be weird, and he was constantly having stomach issues.
But of course, because of his stress and job, and it made sense.
It made
Kind of
sense.
like
We
with
could
your
justify
stuff.
it. Yeah.
Once again, there was plenty of ways to make it fit.
There was
Yeah.
always a justification. There was a way to make it make sense.
Yeah.
So when you start, like I guess everybody does, with this one thing's going to make me feel better, and we all know it doesn't. So
Yeah.
it leads to the next day of, well, crap, I want to feel that way again. As though it's the next day. So
Yeah.
is that the cycle that just started happening? One day led to 2 days that led to,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
because you're a big guy, I'm guessing you hit a level where that didn't work anymore. So you had to like,
Yeah, there's escalation that has to happen. So yeah, and it, I mean, it was, I mean, unfortunately, like then 2020 happens. We turned 2020, and the other thing too is like being in Las Vegas at that time, like the number one thing, like Adrienne had been saying, whenever she was struggling with anorexia in its early stages too, is she was withdrawing. Well, we were already away from everybody.
Yeah.
So we had no family on the West Coast. Everybody was out further in the East. I mean, Texas is the closest family we had, and that's still quite a ways away. And so we had already been isolated. So like half the work was done. And we had no friends because everybody that we made friends, they ended up moving away quickly.
Yeah.
And then our church was still far away, and we hadn't made really close connections. So we had mostly like
The
church
connection,
acquaintances.
yeah, the connections that we made were like, and I absolutely love some of the people that we, became friends with in Vegas, but Vegas is a very transient city, you know? So it's like, unless you really pursue relationships there, they're not going to, you have to choose to pursue those relationships.
Yes.
And so I was involved because I started working for our church part-time and then ended up being full-time. So I was making those relationships and some of those connections, but he wasn't. He was at home working. And so it was very, very easy, especially once the pandemic hit, to have excuses not to
Spend time with anybody.
spend time
yeah.
with anybody.
And I was going to say, so in case you all forgot about 2020, that's a pandemic, which in Adrienne's notes, she says, and this is the part that blows my mind, that it made it really easier for you to continue. And I looked at it, I said, wait a minute, the world is shut down. How was that easier? Like, how was that easier?
Well, total isolation. Absolute isolation.
No accountability.
No accountability. I didn't have to deal with anybody. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I didn't have to like worry about any of it. And because we were in the house, like if it did smell, one, I couldn't tell because it was in me.
Right.
And then two, Adrienne was also in the house, so she just became accustomed to it.
I think maybe that was part of it.
It's the same idea that it's like when we adopted our cats, like we went into the lady's basement where she had all the cats and it smelled
Smelled
awful.
catty?
Yeah.
But
It
then
smelled-
you get a cat and you
Right.
don't smell it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, you just become accustomed to that scent and it's no longer like a unique thing for you. And I'm like, that's probably what aided in it, is that like nothing, it didn't feel odd. It's like, oh yeah, like we don't smell it anymore.
So
kind of
were
thing.
you drinking like when she was going to bed at night, or were you just like drinking with a cup with something else, and it just like you had like, how are you pulling that off? Because you're in this house.
I wanted to know that too. I was like, how did I
Especially
never see it?
in the
Yeah.
pandemic. Like how do you live in a space with somebody and forget the smell part? Because that, like you said, if you're not familiar with it, you might not you might just think the house smells funny today.
Yeah.
You know, it might not click with you. But how do you like live during a pandemic and get away with that?
Yeah. It is stressful. It's the same idea that Adrienne was talking about, like with anorexia, is that like you are on guard and you have to think
You're on
through
edge.
everything. Like you are
Yep.
planning, and the mental effort it takes to feed into that addiction is unreal. And you don't even know it until you're out of it.
Yeah.
You don't even realize how exhausted you are.
Yeah.
Because
Of making all the stories line up and the
exactly.
Oh yeah.
You got to make sure you remember this lie so that you can compound that lie and you can justify this lie.
And build 10 more lies.
Yeah, exactly. You're weaving a web of lie the whole time. Meanwhile, you're still at the middle of it, feeling terrible, feeling the addiction to make yourself not feel terrible for all the things that you're doing around it.
And then drinking some more because you still feel terrible about the
Exactly.
addiction that you can't fix.
Exactly. And for me, it was just like my office was always a mess, and so I just
absolute
used my
disaster.
mess as a good cover. So
Yeah.
I would just hide stuff and just leave it hidden with a bunch of crap all over it, and Adrienne just didn't want to go in my office because it was always a mess.
Yeah.
And because he would get testy if I walked into his, and now I understand why, but like if I came into his office unannounced, or like he would tell me like, it's because you're breaking my concentration or whatever the case is. Like, so it was kind of like this idea is like, I know if I go into his office, he's not going to appreciate it because that's his space. Right.
Yeah.
And like every time I'd go
And you're trying to keep the peace, right?
Right.
Like in marriage, you do that. Like if you
Right.
see that there's certain things that are triggering somebody, you tend to fall away from those things
Yeah.
because you don't want to hear it.
Well, and I knew he was stressed, so I was like, okay, that's fine, that's understandable, whatever. And his office was definitely like, it was like around a corner and all this kind of stuff. So there was no direct view into his office. Same thing kind of here. There was no direct view into his office from where I sat working every single day either. And I was literally, when I sat working, I would be listening to music, like, so I wasn't hearing anything either. And even if I did, like, I don't.
Yeah, you're just doing your thing.
Right. I've got no context for it because it never in my mind did it ever occur to me, one, that he could lie to me, and two, that was something that he would struggle with. Never.
Yeah, just was a perfect little storm.
Right.
So are you a full blown, like every day you're having to have it at this point during the, like, especially, and look, if the pandemic wasn't enough, enough of stress and worry and concern, all the other things, like, so are you full blown during this period? Just, it's every day. It's like just full blown, can't live without it. Like, have you made it to that point during the pandemic?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was definitely where I was at. And the just like the heartbreaking thing is I feel like we're going to start seeing, especially now that we're about 4 years out of the pandemic, we're going to see this as a common story. And I think because the rate of alcohol consumption that happened during the pandemic was massive as a coping mechanism. And I'm no different than other people that struggled with that at that time. I just had it starting, and it just was the best excuse to continue going full force into it. And you
weren't getting other jobs.
And
either,
I wasn't getting
so.
any. And that's the other thing too, is that like, so compound not just what's happening with the world, but in my own industry, the comic industry as a whole is almost fully collapsed because it was already a shaky business model to begin with, like mainstream comics with Marvel and DC. It was pretty shaky as far as the distribution and publishing and stuff. And the pandemic was just a catalyst to break the thing that was already semi-broken. And it just broke it. And so then there was this massive confusion of like, did comics just die because of the pandemic? And so I literally felt like I just watched my entire career. Like I thought I was there. Like I thought I was on the cusp of it. And I feel like I just watched it die. And so like all of why we moved to Vegas, all of like why I've been working this hard, all of like my schooling, everything that I've put and invested into this has now just slipped through my hands.
Yeah, it's gone.
And then I was like, okay, well, what do I have? I've got alcohol. Like
makes me feel better for a minute.
And that, I mean, like that's sadly because pursuing the Lord just wasn't, I mean, I was ignoring the Holy Spirit. I was ignoring conviction because I didn't want to be convicted.
But you were still going to church.
Still going to church.
Well, you're doing all the
on
right
Sunday.
things.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Playing the part.
And that's
Which makes it more miserable though, because
exactly
you do come face to face with God on Sundays, even if you're trying to hide it all week long.
Yep.
And so you're like, oh, conviction,
Exactly.
But then you go home and you pop the bottle open and drink again. And you're like, oh, that's gone.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, and that towards like the I guess maybe middle to the end of 2020, probably middle, it was now at the point to where it was no longer just I needed this to mentally cope. I now need this physically. I am now physically dependent on this.
Yeah, can't function without it.
Nope. Because now if I don't have it, I'm getting the shakes. I'm starting to feel sick. Like I'm starting to withdraw.
A ton towards the end of 2020. Like every other week he was throwing up.
Mm-hmm.
And
so,
I was just like, what the frick is going on?
Yeah.
And it was something, and I don't deal with sick well anyways, but there was something about whenever he got a stomach ache, I would be so mad at him because like there was, for some reason, I just could not be sympathetic towards it. And I wonder, like half of it was just like, I don't know, like I just felt self-inflicted, and it just felt like there were a lot of issues that we were starting to have in our marriage with just like him pulling away, me wanting him to do more, like expectation.
Well, not knowing, not understanding what this mystery was of the shift.
Like, why are you struggling so bad?
Yeah.
Like, why is this such a big deal for you? Why do you act like the world is ending all the time? Like all this kind of stuff.
And you're sick and
you're sick and I expect you to be a man and you're acting like a child. And like, you know, so I was giving him 45-minute lectures every other week too, which is not healthy for any marriage. You know, like I was definitely starting to be the man in the relationship because I was like, he's pulling away. So that just leaves me, you know?
And then you guys move again. So like you leave Vegas. Is this during the pandemic? You guys
2021,
leave?
beginning
Very
of 2021.
beginning of 21.
Yeah. So
we'd always talked about moving to Tennessee because his family's here. And then it just kind of like, you know, everything in Vegas was just falling apart as far as like, like we could have stayed and made it work, but we felt the need to be closer to family again. And I ended up working for my church long distance for about another year or so because it wasn't the job. I loved the people. We loved the church, but it was just like, we feel like we need to be closer to family.
Yeah. So even though coming back, so I think there was like a year period between 22 and 23 that the pattern is still happening. So the marriage is still in a funky place, probably getting funkier by the day.
People are starting to notice that like, you know, I'm constantly giving him the cold shoulder. Or like, I'm like, you're not even like physically pursuing me anymore. And like, what the heck? What is wrong with you? Like, there was just so many things that I could not pin down. Like, why the heck are you acting this way? Like, you're just like, I felt like
a whole different person.
Literally, I felt like it was like a mom-son relationship. Like I felt like you're such a child, man up, you know? Like, in my mind, it was so simple. And we had constant long discussions, which was mostly me just attacking him.
Which is really just me talking and he was sitting there.
And telling him why he was doing everything wrong,
Right.
which of course, and I didn't realize at the time, I was only fueling his beliefs that I'm a failure. I can't do anything right. So I was only making it worse.
Yeah.
Thinking that I was making it better, you know?
There was nothing at that point in my life that I felt like I had succeeded at. And so I felt like everything I did, I would fail. So stepping out to do anything, I was just terrified to do anything because the possibility of not doing it right or failing
or feeling like that failure again.
Overwhelmed me to not want to do anything. And so thus
and
then
I didn't do
failing,
anything but kind of confirm it, you know, because I was always upset at him, which equaled more failure.
Right. So it's like, even when I can't, like, even when I try to do the right thing, I'm still not living up to what her expectation is. So therefore you are a failure.
Yeah.
And so like, it's just this cycle
horrible
that
cycle.
just kept going.
So during 22. So during 22, you're in Nashville. It's crappy. You're drinking that whole year. Like so you started over here in 19-ish somewhere, or like pandemic-y time, but now you're like solid in. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
2020, 2021, into 2022. And 2022 is when people started mentioning things to me. I thought I saw Colin drinking a bottle out of something. My mom, like I said, my grandpa was alcoholic. So my mom knew what that smelled and looked like. And she asked me if Colin was having alcohol issues. And I was like, no, we have a bottle of wine sitting on our counter that's been sitting there for 2
forever,
weeks. Like, I'm like, no, we don't really drink, you know, not knowing that he had bottles of vodka hidden in his closet, you know, like, and so.
And are you realizing like it's 2 years in, like, are you thinking this is a problem? I have a problem. Or is it just, no, I need this to make it through the day to day. I need this to move forward. Like, where was your head?
It was both and. It was both and. Like, I 100% knew this was a problem. But I was mortified to tell anybody. I was so terrified.
Yeah, how do you?
Yeah, I was so terrified.
Because we're still going to church. We're getting more involved with the youth group.
Right.
You know, like we're getting more involved with our small group, way more so than we were in Vegas because we were able to here with, you know, pandemics lifted and all that kind of stuff. And God has been so gracious with our community here. And we so enjoy our relationships. But like, so it was that tug and pull of like being more and more involved in church and hiding a bigger and bigger secret.
Yeah.
Trying to live a double life.
It's exactly that. It's exactly living a double life.
So then that year passes because it's the same patterns going on. You're still dealing with your stuff too in the midst of all this.
I was actually starting to get to the healing process of it. Like funnily enough, I had finally, the switch had started flipping from I just want to be thin to I'm comfortable gaining weight, like in the sense of like I'm a lot more loose with the foods that I'll eat, like all this kind of stuff. And I wanted to feel physically capable. I wanted to feel strong. And so if the numbers on the scale were going up, but I was working out in a way to gain muscle, it was finally okay. So it was like,
so you're getting in a much healthier space while
mindset.
he's getting in a way worse state.
Which I think was God, just because that, that prepared me not to completely fall into a total wreck when it all happened. But like, it was, and maybe that's because I was like feeling like I was pursuing the Lord, or like finally finding some like true healing in my own struggles. Maybe that put his struggles into like more of a perspective of like, you're such a baby, come on, like
right,
it's not that hard, it's not that big of a deal, whatever. But I had zero clue what he was really struggling with. Zero clue. Like I thought I knew, but I didn't.
So how in 2023, was it 2020? Yeah, 2023. How did it come
22.
out? 22.
Yeah,
end
end of
of
2022.
Okay, the very end.
I get those days messed up all the time. But like, so his mom mentioned to me that they had smelled alcohol on him again. And it was like the third or fourth time someone had mentioned it to me. And I was like, what the frick is this? Like, what? I don't know what y'all are smelling. I don't understand. I don't get it. Like, but she had mentioned it he was literally at church at a
it was a father-son
event or something at church that he was doing. Like you were doing a drawing presentation that your dad had asked you to do or something like that. And his mom and I were out to dinner and she mentioned it again to me. He smelled like he had drank an entire bottle of alcohol before he came to help us work on this house that they were flipping. And, he was sweating. And so, of course, like all those things.
It's coming out.
It's coming out.
Yeah.
And, he, in fact, had stopped on the way to the store that morning and bought a bottle of vodka and was drinking it all throughout the day. And like, so, but the way she said it, it just like finally created this like feeling in me of like something's wrong. Like this, okay, I actually need to take it seriously this time. And so she dropped me off. I came and I started looking around in his office and I was like, I couldn't find anything. He had it with him. And when he got home, did I immediately confront you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, like the second you got in the door.
Yeah, with the leftover pizza that you had. And I had just like set my bag down and had taken my jacket off.
And I had said something like, your mom said she smelled alcohol on you again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and there was just this feeling in my chest of like, like kind of like that adrenaline pumping, like my heart was racing. Like I was like, something isn't right. Like there was like, I think it was just the Holy Spirit in me being like, it's not correct. This is not right. Something isn't right. You're about to find something out.
Which was happening in me too. I felt something in that when she had said it, because she said it so abruptly after me walking in.
I just couldn't hold it in.
That like I could feel a pit in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Like you knew the jig was up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I asked him, I was like, just be honest with me. Are you drinking? Something like that. And the way he responded, he said no. But it's like he looked like up and to the left or something like that. Like when you hear like the whole like if someone looks
body
up and to
language,
the left, they're lying, right?
Your body language.
And it was just like the way he did it just made me start panicking because I was like, he's lying. Oh my gosh, he's lying. And I asked him again. And he did the exact same thing. He looked like up and to the side and said no. And I was like, like I start, really. So I was like Colin Dyer, or I was like Nathaniel Colin Dyer. Like I said something like that. I was like, if I find out that you have in fact been drinking and you are lying to me right now, this marriage is over. Like kind of threatened. I don't know if that was the right,
what came
way
out.
to go.
Which is crazy because like I know she said it. I don't even remember her saying that part. I just remember her saying my name, and I don't remember anything else she said after that. Because as soon as she said my name, that was the stirring that like I knew the Holy Spirit was like, all right, it's time.
Like enough.
It's over.
Yeah,
it's time.
Enough's enough.
Yeah. And
So
I
it's funny that she says that because I'm like, I don't remember that at
Yeah.
all. I
When
have
you
no
when you use
recollection
the
of that.
whole name, he blanked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, that's it. It's done."
And so I was like, you tell me the truth. Are you drinking? And he was quiet and he was quiet and quiet. And then he finally said like just a simple yes or something like that. And in my mind, I was like, I knew it. Cause like everything was like feeling like it was starting to fall apart, you know, like, so like I knew it, but at the same time I was like, what, you know, like,
Yeah, but in that moment, all the things falling apart probably made sense.
It did. It
It was
did.
like, oh my, that's
Yeah.
the behavior change. That's the get weight gain. That's like, I'm sure it was very similar to the moment where she says, I have an eating disorder. And you go, that's the this. That.
yeah.
Even though you might have felt the weird in that moment, it all just is right in front of your face and like smacks you.
Yeah. And it was like I don't even remember exactly what happened afterwards, but I was like, I think I asked him, I was like, do you have some right now? Like, where is it? And he pulls out like a half drink bottle, which I realized he'd been sitting in the car drinking right before he came up the stairs. But because I was looking out the window at him in the car, and he was sitting in the car for like 5 minutes. I was like, what are you doing in the car for 5 minutes? You're home. Get out of the car and come upstairs.
Right.
And so like, I think that's why I was so abrupt when you came in the door, because I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, he was sitting in that car for 5 minutes. Was it? I'm waiting. Does he know I
Literally.
got something to say?
Literally. So I think like he walked into his office and he pulled out, 2 bottles out of his backpack that he always carried around with him. That started in like 2021. I didn't understand why he always carried this big heavy backpack around with him, and now I knew why. But like he pulled him out and I was just like dumbfounded. I was like, what am I looking at right now? I couldn't really process. I could, but I couldn't really process it. So like, and he was, crying,
I was sobbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't just crying. I was sobbing.
So I knew, like, part of me wanted to rant and rail and just be like, look at what you've done to to yourself, to our marriage. Like, are you kidding me? Like, there were so many things I wanted to say, but it was like, he was so broken. And I think seeing that, the Holy Spirit was like, he knows what he's done.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't need you to yell at him. He needs to know that you still love him right now. Because I just threatened to leave him, basically, if I found out he was lying to me, which I just did. Apparently you didn't hear that. But
So did you feel like in that moment of just being broken and the truth is out there, did you feel in that moment some relief of like, or was it back to fear and anxiety and like, what's next?
It was all of those things. Like there was relief because like finally I'm no longer holding on to this. But then there's the terror of I'm like, this confirms everything that I thought about myself. And then it's like, what have I done? Like I just ruined everything. Like, yeah, it's all of those things mixed up. That's why I just was sobbing. I couldn't control myself like that was the beginning. I didn't realize how much more the Lord was going to break me, but that was the first wrecking ball into my heart. And then, Adrienne then asked, do you want to go tell your parents?
because like right away for me, I was like, not only do we need accountability, but I was like, you need to like, now that it's started coming out, it has to keep coming out, because the more you keep it in, like the easier it'll be to get away with it, or
Which
like not have that.
You knew that because
My own,
like you were able to have an empathy even though you were not happy. No, you were clearly not a good with this, but you knew because you would walk through that in a different manner. I mean, and what grace is that of God to have let Adrienne go before you and have struggles which were not clearly not what you would want in life, but not knowing the path was going to happen with you, that you had a partner who said, no, we're not just going to sit in the house and try to deal with it, because I know that don't work already. Like we can skip all that crappy time. We don't have to waste time. We're going to go straight to it.
Yeah.
And I can imagine when she used the words, do you want to go tell your family?
I just said yes. I just nodded in my head and I said,
Yeah. So we like literally drove over to his parents' house. It was late at night, but they were still awake. And he told them, bawling, lots of crying, lots of hugging, lots of praying. And then it was already too late at night to like call any more of his siblings. But I was like, tomorrow We're going to call all of your family. We're going to call all of my family. We're going to tell church leadership, you know, like, because we're in positions of leadership at church and you're in sin. Like, that's not allowed.
Yeah.
No. But I was just like, we are going to like, and we're also going to tell our small group. So we're not going to like broadcast it. Right. But we're going to tell the people that we're doing life with the closest. Because there is accountability that must absolutely happen, because it was like one of those things. It was like, it was so secret and I was so unaware of it that I was like, Satan has had this hold on our lives for so long that like we need to throw the doors wide open and let as much light in as possible, because if we even entertain the idea of trying to hide this at all, that's just that's the little tiny toehold that
one
he
more
needs.
day.
But it's just that one tiny toehold that he needs to get right back in.
It plays with the secret game again.
Because now it's not just your secret. Now it's your secret now. And how are we going to manage keeping this? Because we're going to try to fix it.
Right. Exactly.
And then that's a whole new wormhole to like complete destroyment.
Right.
Exactly.
Because now he can't, he's not going to just take Colin out. He's going to take you out too.
Exactly. Aiding and abetting type of thing. You know? Like,
way to go.
Right. So I was like, there's no way. We even called people that like were pastors in our church in Cincinnati. Like, you know, like even if we go to Cincinnati, we're going to have accountability.
No matter where we go, it's going to be that way.
People will know.
So then just to fast forward through it. So it's out in the open. Families know. I'm guessing their reaction was pretty shocked, but also they kind of had hints because you were back in the area and things were weird. So they were kind of like,
They knew. Yeah.
They knew.
People around me knew and I did not. And I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Solid.
It's just, I always look back in retrospect and it's like, it's so like bizarre. And like to think I thought I was smarter, thought I could get away with this.
Yeah. I thought nobody would find out either.
And it's like,
but you did do a good job for a while.
You did.
But it's also like I have to fight that guilt and that embarrassment that I feel for what I did in the past. And it's like, okay, but there's a good ending here.
Yeah. But because you guys were smart in the sense of you immediately said, no, the light has to come in. It expedited the process of healing, because quickly after that happened, you ended up in rehab.
Yeah.
Literally 3 days later.
3 days later.
It was like, so, because my mom and my sister are nurses, and we told them, and my mom was like, how many bottles a day, like all this kind of stuff, because he could go into medical detox or withdrawal or whatever.
Well, it was like
called.
I could go into shock, or like could be a seizure.
Yeah, there's some medical issues that could happen.
And I, like that for me was like the second day I'd already started processing my world's falling apart, and the second day my mom and my sister like all this medical detox stuff, and I was like, what? Like more to consider? Like, oh my gosh. So I'm like on edge the whole time watching him, and I'm realizing I can't even trust him to go to the bathroom because I'm worried he's got alcohol hidden in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so so my mom suggested, she did some research and she found this rehab facility called
S2L Ministries.
Yeah. Which is literally an hour from us.
In Woodbury, Tennessee.
Like just God's provision was astounding. And we called, they had one bed left at the time because they're a constant rotation process. And it was going to cost like buku bucks, but we had the money. And that was one thing where it was like a moment of God was like, are you going to invest in me and in your future and in the kingdom? Or are you going to hold on to this money and try to, figure out like maybe he can get a mentor throughout the week or something like that once a week or whatever. I was like, no. We're going to fully surrender everything, our resources, our time. He's going to go to this place for 6 weeks. And he didn't want to.
Yeah. Because this was also, mind you, November. So 6 weeks was going to encompass Christmas and Thanksgiving. Yeah. And so, so we looked at it and I'm like, I'm laying there on the bed and, my brain is just mush at this point of just numbness, of guilt, of shame, of anger, frustration, fear, just scared. And it was, we had talked to them at S2L about doing some evaluations, getting in and all that stuff. And, I remember we were talking and, Adrienne's like, well, like, what do you want to do? And I remember telling her, sitting on the side of the bed with one of our cats at the time, and I was like, I don't want to go, but I know I have to go. And that felt like it was the first time in a long time I had actually listened to the Spirit, because, but like on my own account, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to 6 weeks to a rehab facility with a bunch of people I didn't know. But I knew that this was the only way to hard reset, that this was like, I have to be around other people where everything I'm doing is centered around my relationship with the Lord.
24/7 accountability.
Yeah.
And I needed to heal.
Yeah. And I knew Adrienne needed, and like,
I needed
as funny as
space.
I needed to
realized,
be away from her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I realized I needed space because I was like, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
I don't trust you at all.
Yeah, you had to have the 6 weeks of like trying to regain your footing,
Yeah.
because that's years,
Like-
years of just the whole lying, and you probably, I'm sure you had something of like, how did I miss this?
Literally, yeah. I was, and then like how I'm at fault because like I was constantly pushing him, like all this kind of stuff, and I didn't feel safe in my own, not like physically safe, but like because he'd been able to get away with it for 3 years, how the heck am I to know if he's doing it again?
Yeah.
So like I was terrified. I literally.
So while he's healing his 6 weeks in the program
Yeah.
and trying to work through the what's, the whys, the hows, the how to get it back on track, you're at home having to deal with you and your feelings.
Yeah.
And then I know because
And
you're
learning to
apart,
trust him again.
you didn't. I know you couldn't have visitors for a while, or
Yeah.
you couldn't be there like all the time. There was
Yeah.
certain times, right?
I could only go once a week to see him.
Yeah.
Well, there was the first week you have no contact.
was a blackout week,
No
yeah.
contact whatsoever. And then you would get assigned, depending on when you got there, you would have a time slot during like 2 days a week where you could call for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Just check in.
15.
Which if you think about it, I mean, it's designed purposely that way because it's allowing him to have small bits back into talking to you and where you go in and hearing the progression of growth, so that you can be working that 6 weeks to get your mind right. Because let's face it, another pivotal moment here, like the devil uses these moments right here to tell a wife or whichever spouse is the husband, like, are you going to do this anymore? Are you going to stay? Are you going to leave?
Yeah.
Like, is this?
And I had to figure, like, divorce, like, was never an option in, in my life. Right. And suddenly I was like, is there a future here?
Yeah. Is this it? Because let's face it, the devil wants nothing more than to ruin marriage.
Absolutely.
I mean, you two together are a force to reckon with. So if he can tear you up in one way and mess it up for you to where you go, I don't want a part of that, or he can tear Colin up in one way and you say, I didn't sign up for this,
Right?
And I can't trust you now. So now we need to go our separate ways.
Yeah.
I mean, he's ruined 2 lives, a marriage, and everything that marriage had for a future, and that's his ultimate goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In any addiction, whether it's, who cares what it is,
Yeah.
it's to ruin what you think is exciting and numbing and making it better or looking or this. It's ultimately to ruin you, to ruin you and ruin your soul.
Yeah.
Yep. And he got pretty dang close.
And to keep and to keep you separated. But that's what I said at episode 1, where I said that foundation is so important, but because you guys had something bigger than his lies and his deceit, and he'd already walked you guys through Adrienne's situation. There was something there that he'd already pre-placed for each of you to be like, no.
Yeah.
It's not an option.
It's hard. It hurts. It sucks.
Yeah.
How could you do this? How could you do that? This is not what I signed up for. Because let's face it, we all have those moments in marriage. But there was an anchor. Like he threw an anchor out that said, okay, you might drift out in some rough waters, but I've got you. You're anchored.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing
Yeah.
to know that you can screw up
so badly.
to the point to where you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing we knew, is that God,
Yeah.
like this,
That was it.
It has to be God.
Yeah, like we cannot, like, you cannot fix an eating disorder. You cannot fix alcoholism.
We tried.
Yeah, we
I
tried.
can't fix the things I do. Literally, the only thing I can do is, like what you said was so big, because it's been a big thing in my life recently, is just take it to God.
Yeah.
It has to go on the altar. You said our money, it didn't matter. It was all God's. Like you guys said, it's going back to the foundation. It's yours. I need you to deal with this.
Yep.
Because you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
because
I
there's no
can't.
other choice. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I can't physically. I mean, it was going to be tricky for you not to go back to old ways. You know, it's going to be tricky for him to try to manage, and then all of a sudden everybody's trying to freak out, and family, the ripple effect.
Yeah.
There's a ripple effect that happens. So now you got everybody weighing in on it, but at the end, if you don't have the foundation, if you don't have God, then you're gonna be staying right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
or go worse.
and destruction.
Yeah.
Complete destruction. So, not to expedite your story, but I know that you you went through the program. It was a very successful.
Absolutely.
You
It's
came
an incredible
out.
program.
Yeah. I can't speak highly enough of S2L Ministries and what they do. Like, yeah, it's amazing what they do up there. We call it Miracle Mountain.
Yeah.
Because the miracles happen up there.
Yeah.
100%.
So you guys, you came out. I know you guys came out. You came out of it, and you worked on and were able to discuss and talk about the things where what Adrienne was feeling. You were able to hear those things, and then what you were feeling, and like you said, God had kind of put He did. He placed like this place in Adrienne's heart where she could actually understand
Yeah.
what you were going through because she had a similar struggle.
Yeah.
But you would think a lot of people would say, well, that's great, and I'm so glad. But you actually have a full circle moment that's happening in your life now. So you had your stuff, and it got better, and it took time. It took lots of time. Like, I don't want people to think this was like a couple of months. Like,
No,
it
this
took
is
years.
10
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then here you are on a year going into a year of being healthy again and not having that stronghold on you anymore. But you, because of your disorder, like kids wasn't
So we talked about having kids, but we were also never in a place financially where kids made sense either. We couldn't afford it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, that was
We could
probably
hardly
also-
afford us.
right? And our own stupid habits. But like we were starting to talk kids, and because I was like, well, we're getting older, like if this is a decision we're gonna make, we need to make it now. But I had we have a history of infertility in my family. I had, hadn't had my period for about 2 years while I was struggling with anorexia. So I was like, I don't know what damage my, anorexia did to my body. Yeah, I'm healthy now, but like, I don't know if I broke anything, basically.
Right.
We don't know if Colin's got any issues from all the drinking, so we were like, there were so many question marks, and there were a lot of ladies around us in my small group and his family getting pregnant. And so it was just kind of like, but we were like, let's try, like, and it's amazing too that God was allowed us to build our relationship back so quickly. But I think it's only because we fully surrendered it all to him, like in such a way that we have never done before. Like everything was fully surrendered to him. Our finances, our future, every single day.
Day to day.
Day to
it
day.
changed.
We woke up, we did a Devo together.
We prayed together.
Like, we made very intentional choices. Like, all
I
right,
think
Lord.
you got smacked in the face with the reality of what happens.
Yes.
When you
So
are
hard.
disconnected, even if you're connected, you're at church or with people, but you're disconnected.
Yeah.
Like, there's a smack in the face moment, and you have to either decide I'm all in or we're out.
Right.
Yep.
There's no straddling the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone likes to think.
Yeah.
Like, I can do both
I
the
can do
world
both.
and God.
Yeah.
It's so not true. It is absolutely not true. It's black and white. You're either for me or against me. And so we had to choose last year in 2023, all right, Lord, we're for you. We're going to go to counseling. We're going to, we're going to read, we're going to pray, we're going to do life together, everything together. And I did have issues trusting him at first. I would double check on things. I would get nervous, but it was a lot of like, all right, Lord, if I can see that you're working in him, until I can trust him again, I'll trust you in him.
Right.
And then, so that was helpful as far as learning to trust again. And we started praying about having a family, and we found out a couple weeks after our 10-year anniversary
Yeah.
that we were pregnant.
We
and
were
I was
at
like,
my cousin's
what?
wedding.
They're
and-
having a baby, people.
Yeah.
If you missed that, they're having a baby. This baby will be here by the time you guys all hear this
Literally.
podcast.
That's true.
I'm
But what
36 weeks.
But what a full circle moment
Yeah.
of just like, seriously, just put it on a pot. lies and deceit from the enemy, not even personal, which caused both of you to have lies and deceit between you in different seasons of your life.
Yeah.
There were so many moments where it could have been broken, it could have been destroyed. And then when
Satan tried.
And then when
He
Adrienne gets, when Adrienne goes through hers and gets it, then all of a sudden he's like, oh, well, she's not working anymore, so I'm going to hit you.
Yeah.
And then so he's doing that with you. But then once the dust settles and she's able to pull from strengths of what she went through to help you to know how to navigate, and you go through the process. And again, addiction, there's always things you have to work on. You're constantly having to work on not making those choices again. That's just the reality of addiction. And but during that, God was so merciful to let you to be able to reconnect. It didn't tear you apart. It made you better.
Yeah.
And then he says, hey, I'm going to give you a little something special. And here you are. Like when it says like, ashes to beauty, like that,
Right.
that's this moment. Like everything probably felt like it was burning down around you guys.
Yeah.
It did.
But then to sit here at this time and see what's being planted out of the ashes, like God took seed in the ashes and said, what you see is dirty and muggy and it's funky. And I know you don't know what's happening, but under all that, I've got something that's going to bloom.
Yeah.
I mean, what a moment.
Yeah. It was pretty incredible. It was almost like, oh my gosh, this is way sooner than we thought. But at the same time, and a little nervous that like the stress of a kid might make him drink again, or like, can I handle this physically?
Yeah, you being
like,
pregnant and growing.
yeah,
I can imagine there's
gaining weight,
triggers.
like actually seeing it on the scale, like, oh my gosh, that's what terrified me in the first. But like the Lord has been so gracious because we have just tried to drench ourselves as much as we can with community, with church, with devos and stuff like that, like very intentionally choose that.
Yeah.
I think God has used the Holy Spirit to very quickly point out to us throughout the year, and we've been very open and honest with each other, but like he's very quickly pointed out to me like, Adrienne, that thought process will lead you down a bad path. So I've through the Holy Spirit, you have a choice to choose this path, which is my path, or to choose your path. And you've chosen your path before. You know exactly where that's going to lead.
Yep.
So like, and same thing for Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the beginning of 23, coming back, I had nothing. I had no projects lined up. I had no work. I had nothing. And so I didn't know, what to do. And so I was like, all right, Lord, like you gave me my love for art back, like wholeheartedly. Cause I thought I was ready to tap out before I had gone to S2L. And that was just so weird for me, cause I've always loved it. But I had it back and I was like, all right, Lord, what are you going to do with it then? Because I'm like, now I love it, but I got nothing to do.
Yeah.
But it was so much the Holy Spirit being like little steps. Like I'm training you, but like little bits at a time. I'm not giving you full spoonfuls. You're just going to get a little bit at a time. And so I was getting these little bits. And so the whole purpose was you're trying to be very intentional through 23 of like, be faithful with little. And so anything that we got, which like, okay, thank you, Lord, for this. Let me do it to the best of my ability, the way that would honor you. And it's in your hands. And the Lord blessed that. And through 23, it just became more prevalent. It's like, yeah, all of this is the Lord's. It doesn't matter. Like the thing that took us to Vegas, this vaguely defined idea of success, got us all in this world of hurt because it was all focused on us. And then we turn around and be like, okay, well, like, I don't know what success is, but I know what obeying you looks like. And I know that that's what you call me to do, is to be obedient. And that changes the perspective of success, because I don't really care about any of those things anymore. Now I'm like, I love the gift that you've given me. I want to honor and love the wife you've given me. I want to steward a family. And the Lord knows your desires, but the Lord also changes your desires.
Yeah.
And that was such a huge blessing of what 2023 ended up looking like, was just changing those desires to be in line with his will, not ours.
So I had a moment a few weeks ago where I was thinking through some things, and I was like, there was a situation in my own life, and I realized that I had handled it better than what I had typically done in the past, right? It was a moment where I saw a pattern was a little bit of a shift. And the Holy Spirit was so quick to remind me of that when when God uses things or he does things, he's through those things, through the hard things, he's actually shaping your heart to have the heart that's like his heart, so that the will of what I wanted or the will of how I thought things would be is now, okay, it's not about you. I need you to grow and see, and I need to like tweak your heart so that your heart aligns with my heart. And then when your heart aligns with my heart, we do this together.
Yeah.
And whatever we come up against, because you want what I want, then you know I'm there and I'm with you. And it was such an aha moment. Like I've heard that, I've known that my whole life, but it's kind of what, it's exactly what you're saying right here, is that through all of this stuff that happened, he was molding your heart so that he can take you forward, both of you forward with a family and all the things he has planned for you. But you're going to seek them more for him and not for yourself. And that doesn't mean you're going to have moments where you don't get kind of caught up in self, because it's this the life we live in. We're human.
Yeah.
But he gave you such a stone of remembrance. Like there's two solid things in your life that at the first moment of probably a waver, you're going to go, oh, not again.
Yep.
Let me go to my other and tell them, like, here's where I'm at. And let me go to those people who we trust.
Yeah.
And we've done that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole way. That's the plan, y'all.
Yeah.
Like
that's how it's supposed to
That's
work.
how this is supposed to work. We're not supposed to live inner. We're supposed to live outer. And God knows we're going to mess up.
Yeah.
Like from Genesis, he wiped people out like twice in the Bible. Like we're going to mess up. But when we work through that and we see the things like what you've seen and our hearts change and become his heart, then everything looks different. And it's amazing. So, as we wrap up here, I have one question. I don't care who answers it. You both can. I like to leave our listeners with something, right? Like it's one thing to tell your story, but if you're a person who's struggling with this and you don't really know what, like you go, this is great, but I don't know what. I don't know how I don't have somebody in my life like Adrienne who's going to call me on it. I don't have somebody to help me walk through it. So looking back now, because you're on the other side, looking back and reflecting on your journey, what is the most significant lesson you've learned, and what would you tell people who are struggling with what you guys have struggled with? Like, what's the next step?
Yeah, I think it's just, for me, it's like bringing it out into the light. Like you have to tell someone, you know, like whether it's someone who you're comfortable with or not. Sometimes it's easier or better if it's someone that, like, it's like church leadership or, you know, something like that. Someone who has some resources maybe to point you to someone who could help you or something like that. But like bringing what is hidden in the darkness into the light is the first step, because like if it stays in the darkness, it can remain hidden, but like you have to expose it. And that's where it starts, even if it's just one person, like
just having the courage.
And that's the hardest part. And that is the hardest part, but like it's the most necessary. Like, that's where it all starts.
That's where it has to start.
Right. Yeah. And maybe it looks like just surrendering all the fear and the lies that Satan will tell you that your life is going to fall apart. If you do tell someone, if you are honest, then it'll get even worse. That's a lie straight from hell. Yeah. Like, it's such a lie. That's exposing.
It's a trap. Yeah. It's a trap.
Yeah. That's what keeps you in the dark. Exposing that darkness to just a smidgen of light starts chasing it away.
Yeah. And isolation too.
Isolation.
The minute you find yourself craving the isolation because of something is the minute you need to realize, like, I'm in deeper than I thought I was.
Yeah.
That's where Satan does his best work.
Exactly. Because if he can get you, I loved this illustration of, Satan can't be everywhere all at once. But what he can do is he can be like a spider, and he can weave a tangled web around you of sin that you're going to get stuck in. And the longer you struggle against it, the more you're going to stick in that spider web, and he'll keep checking on you. Make sure that
you're still over there by the spider web.
Okay, he's fine. No one's helping him out, because the longer you stay isolated and you're not asking for help to pull you out of that spider web, the more you're just going to struggle by yourself, and he'll leave you.
Yeah, because you're safe there. You're tangled up.
He doesn't have to do anything. You're doing all the work to keep yourself stuck.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. So here's the thing for people who are out there and they say, well, that's great. I don't have a husband. I don't have a wife. I'm not close to my family. There is still lots of help out there. There are hotlines. There are ministries like us that you can just reach out and be like, hey, I need prayer for this. Or can somebody just contact me and talk with me? So don't feel like if you don't have the strong family bond or the big Christian background that you're still stuck in that web. Because again, that's still a lie that Satan's going to tell you. Well, you don't have none of that. Boldface lag. I don't know if you know this, but there's this thing called the internet and you can tap in all kind of things and have resources like snippety snappity jab, right? So you don't have to believe that there's nobody that can help you. Even us here at Stepping Forward, you can send us on our webpage. We have a place you can contact us if you just need to have somebody to tell and say, I don't know what to do next. That's a step in the right direction. It doesn't have to be a huge circle of people. It's just taking that step. And then to add to what they said, what they said was great. And in my quiet time this morning, it was so crazy I was coming here and the story that I knew, but it was funny because it was talking about bringing your prayers and your petitions of thanksgiving when times are tough to God. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And it said, take the opportunity in hard times and the times where you're in those deeper waters to just say, thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity to trust you more. Yeah. And that's what you guys did. Even though maybe you didn't say those exact words, you leaned into God and said, I'm going to have to trust that you've got this because I don't. And it says, this is the best part of what it says, is through the lessons of trust that I send to you come in difficulties. So lessons of trust are wrapped in difficulties, right? The benefits far outweigh the cost of those. And I think you two are living examples of that. You could have easily said, nope. And several times you could have said, this is too much.
Part of me wanted to at some point.
Well, I think that's human,
done.
right?
Yeah.
It's human. But look at the benefits. Look at the cost that you had to do, right? But God, did these things before he entered children into your life. He worked through some of these things to say, you got some things about you don't even know about. We need to deal with this before we bring another generation in here through you guys.
Yeah,
it's just the timing is incredible. We would not have been able to be good parents to our son if God hadn't broken us the way he had. We would have been miserable.
Yeah. And the Lord was, he's the long suffering of allowing us to be married for 10 years and never having a kid during that entire 10 years.
Yeah.
And then
I was still healing. You were starting to struggle.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like he knew what he was doing.
He knew.
I'm just saying. Let me put it out there.
He's you guys are not ready for the child right now.
Well, in wrapping up, the last thing I want to tell our listeners is I just want you to know that if you're struggling with any of these issues or any other issues, guys, you're not alone in this journey. And there is hope for a better and a brighter future. You do have choices. You are not stuck in that web. I love that web. It's going to be in my mind forever. I want to encourage you to take one step at a time, taking the first step of maybe admitting it to yourself, and then finding someone that you can talk to. If you're not a believer, this is a good time to start talking to God, start reaching out. If you are a believer, then go back to your foundation and start leaning on your faith, so that you can move through these challenges and you can seek support along the way. And I want to assure you that redemption and healing are within your reach, and that your story is still being written. God still has that pen in his hand. And each chapter is going to bring you closer to wholeness and fulfillment. It's not going to always mean that everything in your chapter is going to be cozy and picture perfect, but that's where God uses moments of growth to keep your chapters moving forward. So I want you to hold on to hope that there is a brighter future, and that just like these guys and in my own personal story, that God can take what's broken and make it into a beautiful display. And then it's our jobs. It's your job, Colin. It's your job, Adrienne. It's my job to share our stories with people so that we can tell of what God has done. And because in all things that happens, it is our job to give glory back to God.
Amen.
Yeah, amen to that.
And this story, your story, my story, the stories we hear on this podcast, every one of them turn back to, I could not have done this. God had to do it.
Amen.
And this is yet another one. And I just love it. And I want to thank you guys again for bearing with us for 2 episodes. And for
We're talkers.
hey, so am I. So it worked out well. I want to invite our listeners, if you have stories of overcoming and struggles or finding hope, or maybe you are struggling, you can find us on social media, Stepping Forward. It's FWD for everything. We're out there on all the platforms. We have a webpage if you want to share your story there, or if you're looking for encouragement, we would love to take part in encouraging you. There's help out there, guys, and we can help you find it. Amen. So don't feel like you're stuck tonight or today, because you're not. Don't let the devil hold you in the spider web anymore.
Yeah, that's a lie.
It's time to take your finger and break the web. So anywho, you know what, guys? Thank you for listeners for sticking with us through the story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope you have just got some encouragement from these guys. I know I have. And so we hope to see you next week for Stepping Forward's Southern Soul Chats. See you later, guys. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Southern Soul Chats. We hope you found inspiration, encouragement, and valuable insights to carry with you through your week. We invite you to subscribe to Southern Soul Chats so that you never miss an episode. We are a branch of Stepping Forward Ministries, a 501c3 Christian nonprofit, and we kindly ask for you to consider making a donation today. Your contribution will play a vital role in sustaining the podcast and allowing us to continue sharing these impactful stories of faith. As you leave today, remember your story is a part of a bigger narrative, and your faith has power to guide your path. Keep stepping forward with hope, trust, and assurance that you're never alone. This is Dr. Miranda Ferguson. We hope you have a great week and keep stepping forward.